In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to knit step by step this beautiful little cardigan sweater for little girls and boys between 3 and 4 years old. Now, when I uploaded the Samuel cardigan, many of you commented and asked that I make a bigger size, so here it is. I hope you like it. If you want to see the Samuel cardigan, which is a smaller size, in the information box, I'll go ahead and leave you the link to that tutorial. Now, the one we're going to make in the tutorial, like I said, is for 3 to 4 years old, but you can easily make it smaller or bigger. I'd say from 1 to 2 years old and up to 6 to 7 years. In the information box below, I'll go ahead and leave you some information on how you can easily make it smaller or bigger, so be sure to check that out. And as always, if you prefer a written pattern, check out my Etsy shop. I'll leave the link to my Etsy shop up here on the right hand side and in the information box below. Thank you so much for your support. Now, to make this sweater, this is the yarn that I used. This is a number 4 yarn along with 1 strand of kid mohair. For the 3 to 4 year size, which is this here, you're going to need a total of 280 grams, which is about 566 yards. You will need less or more depending on the size that you make. You're also going to need 6 buttons. These buttons are 16 millimeter size, but you can also use 15 or 17 millimeter size. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. Don't forget to subscribe and activate the notifications bell. Thank you so much for watching. Okay, to begin and knit this little sweater, I'll be using these US size 8 or 5 millimeter knitting needles. I'm using circular needles, but you can use straight needles. These are 32-inch long. Now, the yarn that I'm using, it's number 4 yarn. You can also use any Aran weight yarn or 10 ply. In the information box, I always leave gauge information if you need that. So here, to begin, the first thing that we need to do is we need to cast on our stitches. I'm going to show you how to cast on your stitches using the long tail cast on method. I'm going to cast on a total of 64 stitches. So here, to begin, we're going to wrap the yarn around 20 times. I like to measure my yarn, that way I know my long tail is going to be enough. So here I have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Now, I have enough yarn here for about 20 stitches. I'm going to double it up. I have enough for about 40. Double it up again. I have enough for 60, and I'm going to double it up again. That way, I have enough, and I don't have to repeat this again. So we have enough yarn here for about 80 stitches. Now make a slip knot. Insert both needles through this loop. Now this here is the yarn we just measured, and this here is coming from the skein. Now open up the yarn like this. We're going to go from left to right, and we're going to grab a loop like this. This is the long tail cast on method. I like to use both needles, that way the first row is nice and loose. Now continue like this and finish casting on a total of 64 stitches. I'm going to come back and show you what we need to do next. I finished casting on my stitches. I have 64. Now here at the end, I'm just going to tie a knot like this, and now carefully remove one of the needles. Now here, to begin with row 1, all we're going to do is we're going to knit across. So knit the first stitch, knit the next stitch, knit the next, and so on. For rows 1, 2, and 3, this is all I'm going to do. I'm just going to knit across. Now this is going to be for the neckline. Now this little sweater is being knit top down. We're going to do the neckline, then we're going to do the yoke. After that, we're going to divide for the sleeves. We're going to make the first sleeve, then the second sleeve, and then the body. So you can certainly use straight needles to make this little sweater. Now continue and finish row 1 After you finish row 1, you're going to turn and then repeat the same thing for row 2, and then repeat again the same thing for row 3. All we're doing here is we're going to knit across for 3 rows. Finish these 3 rows and then I'll come back and show you what we need to do next. I finished making these 3 rows here of garter stitch, row 1, 2, and 3. We just knit across. Now I'm going to start the pattern for the yoke. The yoke will consist of repeats. We're going to do a total of about 3 repeats, and each repeat consists of 6 rows. So this here is going to be row 1 of the first repeat. In this first row of the first repeat, I'm going to add a buttonhole. This little sweater I'm making for girl, but if you're making it for boy, you're going to do the following. Here at the beginning of the row is where you're going to make your buttonhole if you're making this for boy. I'm going to make mine for girls, so I'm going to make mine at the end of the row. So let me show you what you need to do if you're going to make your little sweater for boys. So here you're just going to knit 2. Remember, this is only for boys. You knit 2, then you're going to yarn over, and then you're going to knit 2 together. I like to knit 2 together through the back. And then you're going to knit 1. Now these 5 stitches are going to be my button band, so I'm going to place a stitch marker, but I'm going to undo this here because, like I said, I'm making mine for girls, so I'm going to make my buttonhole at the end. So here to begin, if you're making it like I am, you're going to knit 5. Now place a stitch marker to mark the button band, and now we're going to start our repeat. Again, this is row 1 of the first repeat. So here we're going to start by purl 2, yarn over, purl 2, yarn over, purl 2. And you're going to do this up to the last 5 stitches, ending the row with purl 2. Or ending the repeat before the 5 stitches with purl 2. So I will meet you right here 5 stitches before we finish to show you how we're going to finish this first row to the first repeat. I'm here at the end of the first row to the first repeat. Now these 2 stitches before the last 5 stitches are purl 2. Make sure that you finish the row with purl 2. Now place a stitch marker to mark the button band here on this side. And now I'm going to make my buttonhole here at the end because I'm making this little sweater for girls. So to do this, I'm going to knit 2, yarn over, then knit 2 together through the back, and then knit 1. Here's the buttonhole. Now turn for row 2. Oh, before I do that, you should have a total of 90 stitches at the end of this first row to the first repeat. For each one of these 6 rows for this repeat, we're always going to have 90 stitches. So now for row 2, turn. Here we're going to knit 5. That's 2. This 3rd stitch is the yarn over, so knit this through the back loop and then knit the rest. Pass the stitch marker. If you're doing this for boy, you're just going to knit 5 and then do this at the end of the row. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to knit 2, purl 1, knit 2, purl 1. So here, all of the yarn overs, I'm going to purl. And then the stitches in between, I'm going to knit. So knit 2, purl 1, knit 2, purl 1. Continue like this to the end of this second row to the first repeat. I will meet you at the end. I finished the second row. Now here at the end, these 2 stitches before the stitch marker, I knit, then I knit 5 here at the end. Now we're going to turn. Now for row 3 of the first repeat, we're going to knit 5 here at the beginning, pass the stitch marker, Now here you're going to purl 2, knit 1, purl 2, knit 1, purl 2, knit 1, purl 2. And that's how you're going to continue to the end of this third row. So continue like this, and I'll meet you at the end of this third row to the first repeat. I finished the third row. Now here at the end, these 2 stitches before the stitch marker, I purl 2, then I knit 5 here at the end. Again, remember that at the end of each one of the rows here for the first repeat, you should always have 90 stitches. Now turn for row 4. Row 4 is worked on the wrong side. I forgot to mention what side each row is. Row 1 is on the right side, row 2 wrong side, row 3 right side, and then here the 4th row is going to be worked on the wrong side. So to begin, knit 5. Pass the stitch marker. Now knit 2, purl 1, knit 2, purl 1, knit 2. And that's how you're going to continue to the end of this row. The last 5 stitches, remember that you always knit no matter what side you're on. So continue, finish this 4th row. For the first repeat, I'll meet you at the end. I finished the 4th row. Now the 4th row is worked on the wrong side. 2 stitches before the stitch marker, I have 2 knit stitch, then I knit 5. Now for row 5 of the first repeat, we're going to do the same thing we did in the 3rd row. We're going to knit 5 here, pass your stitch marker, purl 2, knit 1, purl 2, knit 1, purl 2. And that's how you're going to continue to the end of this 5th row. This here is the right side, so if you want to place a stitch marker, I forgot to mention when we started the first row of the first repeat that this would be the right side and this would be the wrong side. So the front and then the back. So place a stitch marker if you want. Now continue, and I'll meet you at the end of this 5th row. I finished the 5th row. Now turn for row 6. Row 6 is on the wrong side. Now row 6 is the same thing as row 4. So here, knit 5, pass your stitch marker, and knit 2. Oops. Purl 1, knit 2, purl 1, knit 2. And that's how you're going to continue all the way to the end, up to the last 5 stitches. The last 5 stitches you always knit no matter what side you're on. Now let's continue and finish this 6th row to complete the first repeat. I will meet you at the end of this row. I finished the 6th row. Here at the end, the 2 stitches before the stitch marker, I have knit and then knit the last 5 stitches as well. This completes the first repeat. Like I said, each repeat consists of 6 rows. Now in between the repeats, we're going to do a total of 6 rows where we just knit for each row. So here to begin, row 1, we're going to knit 5, pass the stitch marker, and then just knit across. So knit all of your stitches. After you finish this row, you're going to turn and you're going to knit across, and then repeat the same thing for row 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we're going to make a total of 6 rows here in garter stitch. That means you knit every stitch for every row, and at the end of each row you're going to have 90 stitches as well. I'll meet you at the end of the 6th row here for this part. I finished making these last 6 rows in garter stitch. So far we have completed 1 repeat with 6 rows, and then the rows in between of garter stitch, which are also 6 rows. Now for the second repeat, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to knit 5 here at the beginning, pass your stitch marker, purl 2, yarn over, purl 2, yarn over, purl 2. And that's how you're going to continue up to the last 5 stitches. These 2 stitches before the stitch marker, they need to be purl 2, and then we're going to knit 5. I will meet you at the end of this first row to the second repeat. I'm here at the end of the first row to the second repeat. Now these 2 stitches before the stitch marker are purl 2, then knit 5. At the end of this first row of the second repeat, you should have a total of 129 stitches. Now for row 2, this is going to be worked on the wrong side. I'm going to knit 5, pass the stitch marker, knit 2, purl 1, knit 2, purl 1, knit 2. And that's how you're going to continue to the end of this row. Now these 2 stitches before the stitch marker, you're going to finish with knit 2, pass the stitch marker, knit 5. I'll meet you at the end of this second row to the second repeat. I'm here at the end of the second row for the second repeat. These 2 stitches before the stitch marker, I have knit 2 and then knit 5 here at the end. Row 2 is on the wrong side. Now for row 3 of the second repeat, I'm going to knit 5, pass a stitch marker, purl 2, knit 1, purl 2, knit 1, purl 2. That's how you're going to continue to the end of this third row. Here at the end, these 2 stitches before the stitch marker, you're going to purl 2, then knit 5 at the end. And remember, at the end of each row for the second repeat, you're always going to have 129 stitches. I'm here at the end of the third row. Here at the end, 2 stitches before the stitch marker, I have 2 purls and then knit 5. Now turn. Now for the fourth row of the second repeat, knit 5. Pass the stitch marker, knit 2, purl 1, knit 2, purl 1, knit 2. Continue like this for this fourth row. Here at the end, these 2 stitches before the stitch marker, you're going to knit 2, then pass the stitch marker and knit 5. Finish this fourth row of the second repeat. I'll meet you at the end. I finished the fourth row. Now turn for row 5 of the second repeat. Knit 5 here at the beginning. Pass the stitch marker, purl 2, knit 1, purl 2, knit 1, purl 2. Continue to the end of this fifth row of the second repeat. I'll meet you at the end. I'm here at the end of the fifth row for the second repeat. Now turn for row 6. This is going to complete the second repeat. So here, this is on the wrong side. Knit 5, pass a stitch marker, knit 2, purl 1, knit 2, purl 1, knit 2. Continue to the end of this sixth row. Here at the end, 2 stitches before the stitch marker, you're going to knit 2, pass the stitch marker, then knit 5. I'll meet you at the end of this sixth row to the second repeat. I finished the sixth row of the second repeat. Now this completes the second repeat. Now what what I'm going to do next is these 6 rows. But in this next row, which is the first row here, where I knit across, I'm going to add my second buttonhole here at the end. If you're making this for boy, then you're going to add it here at the beginning. I'm going to add it at the end. So this is row 19 if I count from the very beginning here where we did the first one, which was on row 1 of the first repeat. So this would be row 1 of the garter stitch rows. So far we have done a total of 18 rows plus row 19 that we're about to work. So here all you do is just knit 5. If you're making a buttonhole here, you're going to do it here at the beginning for boys. If not, then you're going to just knit across up to the last 5 stitches where I'm going to add the second buttonhole. So go ahead and knit across. I will meet you at the end of this first row of garter stitch. I'm here at the end of the first row here of garter stitch after we finish the second repeat. I'm going to make my second buttonhole here at the end. So to do this, I'm going to knit 2, yarn over, knit 2 together through the back, knit 1. And here's this row with a total of 129 stitches. Now turn for row 2. Here we're going to knit 5. This yarn over, knit through the back so that we don't have a big hole there, and finish these last 2. Now pass the stitch marker, and all we're going to do here is just knit across like this. Now after you finish this second row, you're going to turn for row 3 and then repeat the same thing. Then row 4, same thing, knit across. Row 5, same thing, knit across. At the end of the 6th row, we're going to make an increase so that we have even number of stitches here so that we can continue and make the third repeat. Right now I have 129 stitches, so I'm going to add an extra stitch at the end or in the middle of row 6. I'm going to show you that. So for now, go ahead and finish row 2, row 3, row 4, row 5, and then I'll come back and show you row 6. I finished row 5 here of garter stitch. Now we're going to turn for row 6. Now, as I mentioned here, in this 6th row, I'm going to make 1 extra stitch, and I'm going to do it here towards the middle. You don't have to be precise. You can do it at the beginning. You can do it at the end. I'm going to do it right about here, right in the center. So here I'm just going to knit. If you divide 129 by 2, that gives you about, let's see, 64 stitches. So I'm going to knit 64 here. So that's 6, 7, 8, 9, and so on until I have about 64 stitches, which will put me right about here in the center. I will meet you right here to show you how we're going to increase 1 stitch in this 6th row and then continue and finish this part. Okay, I knit 64. I'm right here, right about the center of this 6th row. This is on the wrong side, just about to complete these 6 rows of garter stitch. So here what I'm going to do is make 1 left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up this bar that's between these 2 stitches. So lift it up, put it on top of the needle like this. This is the left needle, and you're going to knit this stitch through the back. That's a make 1 left. And now we're just going to continue and knit across. At the end of this 6th row, I'm going to have 130 stitches because I have increased 1 stitch here in this row. This is so that when I do the third repeat, I have even number of stitches. So continue, finish this row. I will meet you at the end to show you how we're going to do the third repeat. I finished the 6th row of garter stitch here. Now at the end of this row, I have a total of 130 stitches. We added an extra stitch here right around the center. You can add it anywhere as long as you have 130 stitches. Now for the third repeat, we're going to do the same thing we did for repeat 1 and 2. We're going to repeat those 6 rows. We're going to knit here 5, pass your stitch marker, and now we're going to purl 2, yarn over, purl 2, yarn over, purl 2. And that's how you're going to continue to the end of the row. Here at the end, these 2 stitches before the stitch marker, you need to end with purl 2, then you're going to knit 5. I'll meet you at the end of this first row to the 3rd repeat. I finished this first row for the 3rd repeat. Now here at the end, make sure to finish with 2 purl stitches past the stitch marker, then knit 5. At the end of this first row of the 3rd repeat, you should have a total of 189 stitches. Now we're going to turn for row 2, and here I'm going to knit 5, pass the stitch marker, and we're going to knit 2, purl 1, knit 2, purl 1, knit 2. And that's how you're going to continue to the end of this second row of the 3rd repeat. Here at the end, you're going to knit 2, then pass the stitch marker, knit 5. I'll meet you at the end of this second row to the 3rd repeat. I'm here at the end of the second row of the 3rd repeat. Now we're going to turn for row 3. To begin here, we're going to knit 5, pass the stitch marker, purl 2, knit 1, purl 2, knit 1, purl 2. That's how you're going to continue for this 3rd row of the 3rd repeat. Here at the end, 2 stitches before we finish, you're going to purl 2, pass the stitch marker, knit 5. I'll meet you at the end of this 3rd row to the 3rd repeat. I'm here at the end of the 3rd row to the 3rd repeat. Remember that at the end of each row for the 3rd repeat, we're always going to have 189 stitches. Now turn for row 4. Here, knit 5. Pass your stitch marker and knit 2, purl 1, knit 2, purl 1, knit 2. And that's how you're going to continue to the end of this 4th row. Now here at the end, 2 stitches before we finish, you're going to knit 2, pass the stitch marker, then knit 5. I'll meet you at the end of this 4th row to the 3rd repeat. I finished the 4th row to the 3rd repeat. Now turn for row 5, knit 5 here at the beginning, pass the stitch marker, purl 2, knit 1, purl 2. And that's how you're going to continue. Knit 1, purl 2. Here at the end, you're going to purl 2, these 2 stitches before the stitch marker, then knit 5. I'll meet you at the end of this 5th row to the 3rd repeat. I finished the 5th row to the 3rd repeat. Now turn for row 6. Here, knit 5, pass the stitch marker. Now knit 2, purl 1, knit 2, and that's how you're going to continue for the rest of this 6th row. Here at the end, you're going to finish the row by knit 2, pass the stitch marker, knit 5, and that will complete the 3rd repeat. I'll meet you at the end to show you what we need to do next. I finished the 6th row to the 3rd repeat. Now this completes this part here. What we're going to do next is we're going to make this part here, the garter stitch rows. I'm only going to do 5 rows, and then on row 6, which is going to be on the wrong side, we're going to make a couple of increases so that we can divide the sleeves after that. So here to start off, you're going to knit 5, pass the stitch marker, and then just knit across. You're going to do this for a total of 5 rows. I'm going to come back after we finish those 5 rows to show you how we're going to work row 6 of garter stitch. And remember, at the end of each row, you're going to have 189 stitches. I finished rows 1 through 5 here of garter stitch. Now for row 6, we're going to increase a total of 14 stitches so that at the end of this 6th row, we have 203 stitches. That's the number of stitches that I need so that I can divide the sleeves in the next row. So here to begin row 6, I'm going to knit 13 and then I'm going to make an increase. So here we're going to knit these 5 stitches first, pass a stitch marker. So that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Now I'm going to make an increase here. I'm going to make 1 left. So pick up this bar, put it on top of the needle from back to front, and knit this stitch through the back like this. So that's a make 1 left. Now knit 13 stitches again. 1, 2, 12, 13. Again, make 1 left. Pick up this bar that's between the next stitch and the last stitch, put it on top of the left needle from back to front, and knit this stitch through the back. That's a make 1 left. Now knit 13 again and repeat the increase. We're going to do this until we have a total of 203 stitches. Keep track of your increases. We only need 203 stitches, so you may need to adjust towards the end. Now finish this 6th row. I'll meet you at the end. I finished the 6th row. At the end of this row, I have a total of 203 stitches. We increased a total of 14 stitches in this row. So now what we're going to do next is we're going to work the front panel. We're going to make the first sleeve, then continue and work the back side, make the second sleeve, and then continue and finish with the second front panel. So here I have placed some stitch markers, but before that, the yoke, it's finished and it's measuring about, let's see, 15 centimeters, which is about 6 inches. Now, like I said, in this next row, we're going to divide the sleeves. Each one of the front panels has 32 stitches. Each one of the sleeves is going to have 42 stitches, and for the back side I have 55 stitches. So here to continue, I'm going to start this first row of the body. This is going to be a pretty long row. Like I said, we're going to work the front panels, make the sleeve and close it, continue with the back side, make the second sleeve and close it, and then continue with the second front panel. So this is going to be a pretty long first row for the body. And at the end of the row, I'm going to make my 3rd buttonhole. I'm making my buttonholes every 18th row. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Yes. So here to continue with row 1 of the body, I'm going to knit these 32 stitches. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you're making this for boy, you would add your 3rd buttonhole here at the beginning. Now pass a stitch marker and then knit. That's 6, 7, 31, and 32. I've knit 32 stitches here. Before I continue with the stitches for the sleeve, I'm going to add an extra stitch. This is going to be for under the arm. So here I'm going to lift up this bar that's between this last stitch that I knit and the first stitch of the sleeve. So pick up this bar, put it on top of the needle from front to back onto the left needle, and make 1 right like this. Now pass the stitch marker. Here what I'm going to do next is I'm going to leave the main needles here and continue with a second set of knitting needles. Now this is just for better comfort. If you want to continue with the main needles, you can, because what I'm going to do next here is I'm going to work the sleeve. So I like to do this part either using another set of needles in the same size. You can use double pointed needles or even straight needles. I'm going to use these 32-inch long circular needles. And so here to begin, I'm going to knit the first stitch of the 42 stitches that I have for the sleeve and continue until I come to the next stitch marker. So that's 2, 3, 40, 41, 42. I have 42 stitches here for the sleeve. This is row 1 for the sleeve. Now I'm going to leave the main needles here and continue with the second set of needles. This is again just for better comfort. I like to do it like this. That way I don't have to be maneuvering around all of these stitches. Now turn for row 2 of the sleeve, and for row 2 I'm also going to knit across, but from here on I'm always going to slip the first stitch. This is so that we have a nice border here, and once we seam the sleeve it's going to be easier. So slip the first stitch and then just knit across. (41) and 42. Here's row 2 of the sleeve, and now I'm going to place a stitch marker here to mark the first row. That way I can tell you exactly how many rows I'm going to do here. So this will be row 1. Now from here on I'm going to change the pattern of the sweater. I'm going to use the double moss stitch pattern. Let me show you a little sweater that I did with that stitch. It's this little sweater here. We're going to do the sleeve exactly like this. So here, to do the double moss stitch pattern, this pattern consists of 4 rows. So this will be row 1 of the pattern. I'm going to show you all 4 rows here. So all you're going to do here is always remember you're going to slip the first stitch, then you're going to knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1. You're going to do this across these stitches until you come to the last stitch. I will meet you there to show you how we're going to finish this first row of the double moss stitch pattern. This actually is row 3 for the sleeve. I'm here at the end of this first row of the double moss stitch pattern. Now here at the end, this stitch here is a purl, so I'm going to knit the last stitch. Now turn for row 2 of the double moss stitch pattern. Slip the first stitch, and when you're on the wrong side, you're just going to work the stitches exactly how they are. This here is the wrong side. So look here at the next stitch. This is a knit stitch, so you're going to knit. The next one is a purl stitch, so you're going to purl. And that's how you're going to work this second row. Continue and finish. I will meet you at the end. I'm here at the end of row 2. This is on the wrong side. This is row 2 of the double moss stitch pattern. So this stitch here is a purl. The next one I'm going to knit. Now turn for row 3. Row 3 will be worked on the right side. So slip this first stitch. And now look at the next stitch. I have 2 knit stitches. See right here, 1 and 2. So now I'm going to change the direction of this stitch. So instead of starting with a knit stitch, I'm going to switch to a purl stitch. So purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. So basically what you're going to do here for this row is you're going to knit the purl stitches and you're going to purl the knit stitches. And that's how you're going to continue to the end of this third row. Go ahead and finish. I'll meet you at the end. I'm here at the end of row 3 of the double moss stitch pattern. Now this stitch here is a knit. So at the end here, I'm going to purl the last stitch. Now turn for row 4. For row 4 of the double moss stitch pattern. Remember, we always slip the first stitch. And now look at the next stitch. This next stitch is a purl. When you're on the wrong side, you just work the stitches how they are. So it's a purl stitch, so you purl 1. The next one, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, and so on. Go ahead and finish this 4th row to complete the first repeat here of the double moss stitch pattern. I will meet you at the end of this 4th row. I'm here at the end of the 4th row of the double moss stitch pattern. This is the wrong side. Now this stitch here is a knit stitch, so this last stitch I'm going to purl. Now this completes the pattern. You just repeat these 4 rows over and over until we have the length of the sleeve here. I'm not sure how many rows that is going to be, but continue watching. I will let you know how many rows I'm going to do. So here, all you're going to do is just repeat the 4 rows. So let me show you row 1 and 2 here. You're going to slip the first stitch always. Look at the next stitch. I have 2 purl stitches, 1, 2. So this means that I'm going to start the row with a knit and then a purl. So you're going to knit the purl stitches and you're going to purl the knit stitches. And that's the only difference here in the pattern. You just look at what you have done previously on the right side, and when you have 2 stitches of the same, and you switch to either a knit stitch or purl stitch. When you're on the wrong side, remember you work the stitches exactly how they are on the wrong side. If it's a knit stitch, the first one, then you start with a knit or a purl stitch. So here's the last stitch. So this next stitch, purl, and then knit the last stitch. That's row 1, row 2, turn. This is on the wrong side. Slip the first stitch. Look at the next stitch. I have a knit stitch, so I need to start with a knit and then a purl. Knit and purl, and so on until I finish the second row. After I finish the second row, I'm going to turn. And then for row 3, you're going to slip the first stitch, purl the next stitch, knit, purl, and so on. You change the direction of the stitch. And that's how you're going to continue and work the sleeve. Now, if it's easier for you and you don't want to give this stitch pattern a try, then you can always knit the sleeves with a garter stitch or the stockinette stitch. The garter stitch is the same as this part here, where you just knit every row for every stitch, no matter what side you're on. It's also going to look beautiful. I already have a little sweater that I did in garter stitch, so I'll leave the link to that little sweater in the information box below. It's got the same yoke, but it's smaller size. Turn for row 3, slip the first stitch. Here I have 2 knit stitches, so here I'm going to switch to a purl one, then knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, and so on. That's how you're going to work the 3rd row, and then turn for the 4th row and continue and finish. Now continue watching. I'm not sure how many rows I'm going to do here, but continue watching. I will let you know exactly how many rows we're going to do. I'm probably going to count these side stitches, so make sure that you are slipping the first stitch every time you begin each row. So I'll meet you at the end of that row. I'm almost done with the sleeve. I have done a total of 54 rows. So from here up to here, there's 54 rows. If you count the side stitches here, the stitches that we slip as we begin each row, you should have 27. So now we're going to do the cuff. You have 2 options here with the cuff. You can work a row and reduce, I don't know, 4 or 5 stitches, or do what I'm going to do. I'm going to use these 4mm knitting needles to make the cuff. So to begin here, this is optional. You can also just continue with the same needles. The cuff is going to slightly be bigger, but it's okay. Now, if you're using a different needle size to make your little sweater, then just go down a full needle size. So here to begin, I'm going to still slip the first stitch. The next stitch I'm going to knit, then purl, knit, purl, across. I forgot to mention that the sleeve, it's measuring from here, from where we started, the garter stitch row up to here. It's measuring about 21 centimeters, which is about 8.25 inches. I'll give you the finished measurement once the little sweater is done. Knit the last stitch. Now turn. For row 2 of the cuff here, same thing, slip the first stitch and look at the next stitch. It's a knit stitch on this side, so you're going to knit, then purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, and you're going to do this to the end of the 2nd row. This is going to be a 1-by-1 ribbon here. Purl, knit the last stitch. Now turn and repeat the same thing. Slip the first stitch, knit 1, purl 1, across. Now we're going to do this for a total of about 10 rows, and then on row 11 we're going to cast off our stitches. So continue like this until we have a total of 10 rows. I'm going to come back and show you how to cast off your stitches. I finished making the cuff. I did a total of 10 rows. Now we're going to cast off our stitches. So to begin here, we're going to slip the first stitch, knit the next stitch, bring the first stitch over the second. The next one, purl the next stitch, bring this stitch over the second stitch. knit the next stitch, bring this stitch over, purl the next stitch, bring this stitch over, and so on. This is how you're going to continue and cast off your stitches. I will meet you here at the end to show you how we're going to close the sleeve. I finished casting off my stitches. Here's the last loop. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to close the sleeve. We're going to do this from the wrong side. So turn the sleeve like this. This here is the wrong side. Now if you prefer to just cut your yarn, make sure that you leave a nice long tail, enough for you to close this part, and then just pass your yarn through that last loop. You can reattach the yarn here on this side, right here where we left off. You can also do it that way. I'm going to do it like this. That way I don't have to close anything once the sweater is done. So here, to begin from the wrong side, go here to the very first stitch. We're going to do this with a crochet hook. I forgot to mention, I'm using a 5mm hook. I want to make sure my stitches are nice and loose. All we're going to be doing here are slip stitches. So go into this very first stitch right there. Now grab this loop, bring it through, chain 1. Now we're going to go along the very edge. We have these stitches that we were slipping at the beginning of each row. So we're going to start on this side, go through both loops right there, and then go through the other side right here, through both loops, grab a loop, and make a slip stitch. Make sure that these slip stitches are nice and loose. Go through the next stitch. On this side, grab a loop and slip stitch. The next stitch, the next stitch here. Make sure that these stitches correspond on either side. That way you don't have any leftover stitches once we finish this part. And this is how we're going to close the sleeve, and then we're going to continue with the rest. I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to count my slip stitches, and then I'm going to tell you how many I have. The important thing here is that you close your sleeve from the wrong side until you come here to the very end. Here's the stitch marker that I had, so this is going to be my last stitch. So I will meet you right here to show you how we're going to continue with the rest of this first row. I finished closing the sleeve. I have a total of 32 slip stitches. If you have 1 or 2 slip stitches less or more, it's okay. The important thing is that you are right here where we started the sleeve. So now we're going to turn the sleeve to the right side. Hold on to this loop, don't lose it, because we're going to add it to this needle once we turn the sleeve over. Let's see how this turned out. I think that looks pretty good. The sleeve is done. That's how it looks. At the end of the video, I'll give you the finished measurements. Now we're going to continue now with the back side, but before we do that, we're going to add this loop to the right needle. So here's that loop. Put that loop here onto the right needle. Now we're going to add 2 more stitches, because in total I was going to add 4 stitches here under the sleeve. This is to add to the chest measurement. Remember that at the end here, when we finished the front panel, I added an extra stitch. With this stitch here that was left from when we closed the sleeve, I already have 2 extra stitches. So all I need to do now is just add 2 more stitches, and I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to go through the middle of this stitch right here, or you can even go right here. I'm just going to go right here and pick up a stitch. There's that extra stitch. I have 3 and 1 more right here. That's 4 extra stitches. Now I'm going to continue and knit the stitches for the back side. For the back side, I have 55. So all I'm going to do here is just knit across the back side until I come to the next stitch marker. I will meet you right here to start you off with the second sleeve. I finished knitting the stitches for the back side. I did 55 stitches. Now I'm right here, I have the next stitch marker. So what we're going to do here before we continue is we're going to add an extra stitch. Again, we're going to go in between these 2 stitches and just pick up this stitch and put it on top of the needle from front to back and knit this stitch through the front. That's a make 1 right. There. Now we're going to knit the stitches for the second sleeve. Again, we have 42 stitches. I'm going to continue with these needles here. This is just for better comfort. I'm going to leave the main needles here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on until I have 42 stitches for this first row for the second sleeve. Now finish this first row. I'll meet you at the end to show you what we need to do next. I knit these 42 stitches for this first row of the second sleeve. Now we're going to turn. We're going to leave these main needles here waiting until we're ready to continue with the rest of the first row. So now we're going to work on the second sleeve, and same thing for the second row. Remember, we always slip the first stitch and we're going to just knit across like this. This is on the wrong side. So go ahead and finish this second row. I will meet you at the end to start you off with row 1 and 2 of the pattern, since the rest is exactly in the same way how we worked the first sleeve. I finished the second row for the second sleeve. Now we're going to turn. Here we're going to begin the pattern. Again, this is the double moss stitch pattern. It consists of 4 rows and we always slip the first stitch. Now we're going to begin with a knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1 across. Knit the last stitch. That's row 1 of the double moss stitch pattern. Turn, slip the first stitch, and when you're on the wrong side, remember you just work the stitches how they are. So the first one is a knit stitch, so knit 1. Next one, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, and so on to the end of the row. Knit the last stitch, turn. For row 3 of the double moss stitch pattern, we changed the direction of the stitch, so we slip the first stitch. We already have 2 knit stitches here, so we're going to purl 1 instead. So start with a purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, and so on. After you finish this third row, you're going to turn, slip the first stitch, and then just work the stitches exactly how they are when you're on the wrong side. And when you get to the end, turn, slip the first stitch, and then begin again and repeat the same 4 rows. That's how you're going to continue for the second sleeve. It's done exactly in the same way how we did this. If you want to rewind the tutorial, you can. Just rewind back to this area where we started the pattern if you need, but it's a pretty easy pattern, so I'm sure you have already figured it out when you did the first sleeve. Now for the sleeve, you're going to do a total of 54 rows, and then for the cuff, you're going to switch to slightly smaller knitting needles. If you want to, it's optional, or continue with the same size, and you're going to do a total of 10 rows and then cast off on row 11, and then we're going to close the second sleeve. I'm going to finish the second sleeve, close it, and then I'll meet you back to show you how we're going to continue and finish this first row. I finished the second sleeve. Now I'm just going to turn this over to show you how it looks. I did it exactly in the same way how I showed you the first sleeve, and here it is. Now we're going to continue here with the rest of the sweater. I'm going to pick up the main needles again, and this loop that was left from when I closed the sleeve here, the second sleeve, I'm going to put it onto my right needle. Now I need to add 2 more stitches because remember, we're adding 4 extra stitches here. I added an extra stitch before I started the sleeve, and then this loop from when I closed the second sleeve, that's 2 stitches. So now I'm just going to go right here and pick up another stitch. That's 3 and 4 right there. Now there is no right or wrong way of doing this. The important thing is that you add an extra stitch before you make the sleeve. The loop that was left from when closing the sleeve, you put it onto the right needle and then pick up 2 extra stitches. Now we're going to continue and finish with the second front panel. Here I have 32 stitches, and all I'm going to do is just knit up to the last 5 stitches. At the end of this first row, I'm going to make the third buttonhole. So we're going to be adding our buttonholes after every 18th row. Okay, I'm here at the end. I have the last 5 stitches past the stitch marker, and here I'm going to knit 2, yarn over, knit 2 together through the back, and knit the last stitch. And here is the first row. In this row, we have done a lot. We started with the first front panel. We knit 32 stitches. Then I added an extra stitch and knit 42 for the first sleeve, and continue and knit the sleeve and closed it. We added 3 extra stitches here under the first sleeve so that we have a total of 4 stitches, including the stitch that we added before starting the sleeves. Then I knit the back side. For the back side, I had 55 stitches. I added an extra stitch, then I knit 42 for the second sleeve, finished the second sleeve, closed it. That loop that was left, I put it onto the needle, and then I picked up an extra 2 stitches so that I had 4 extra stitches here under the sleeve. And then just now I finished the second front panel, 32 stitches with the third buttonhole here at the end. So at the end of this first row, you should have a total of 127 stitches. From here on, we're going to continue with this same number of stitches. So now for row 2, I am going to turn, and all I'm going to do here is just knit across. In row 3 of the body, I'm going to start the pattern here, the double moss stitch, just like we did for the sleeves. Now here the yarn over, don't forget to knit the stitch through the back. We don't want a big hole. Unless you do, then just knit it through the front. So here, just continue and finish the second row. All you're doing is just knit across. I will meet you at the end of this second row of the body. I finished the second row of the body. This row was worked on the wrong side. I have a total of 127 stitches. From here on, we're going to always have 127 stitches. Now for row 3, here we're going to begin the double moss stitch pattern just like we did here. We're going to repeat these 4 rows that make up the pattern. So here for row 3, I'm going to knit 5, pass the stitch marker. So beginning here, I'm going to knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1. I'm going to do this all the way to the end up to the last 5 stitches. I will meet you here at the end of this third row to show you how we're going to finish this row. I'm here at the end of the third row. Now this stitch before the stitch marker, I have a knit stitch. Now pass the stitch marker and knit 5 here at the end. And here's the third row. Now for row 4, we're going to turn. This would be the second row for the pattern here. We're going to knit 5. Now we're on the wrong side. So when you're on the wrong side, all you do is just look at the next stitch. This stitch here, it's a purl stitch. So all you do is just work the stitches how they are. So purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. That's how you're going to continue for the fourth row. I will meet you here at the end to show you what we need to do next. I'm here at the end of the fourth row, which is the second row to the pattern here. This row is being worked on the wrong side. This stitch before the stitch marker is a purl stitch. Now pass the stitch marker and knit 5. And here is row 4. Now turn for row 5, which is the third row to the pattern. Here we begin with knit 5, pass the stitch marker. Now here I already have 2 knit stitches, 1 and 2, so I'm going to switch the pattern around. I'm going to purl 1 instead here at the beginning and then knit 1. So you're going to purl the knit stitches and knit the purl stitches. And this is row 3 of the double moss stitch pattern. You're going to continue like this to the end of the row. Purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. Finish this row. I'll meet you at the end. I'm here at the end of the 5th row. This is row 3 of the double moss stitch pattern. Now here at the end, this stitch before the stitch marker is a purl stitch. Now pass the stitch marker and knit 5. Here at the end, make sure you keep track of your rows. That way you keep adding your buttonholes. I'm going to tell you on which rows I'm going to do my buttonholes. So at the end of the video, I'll give you that information. So far we have 3 buttonholes. And if you count these garter stitch rows, you can clearly see that we're doing them every 18th row. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and then the garter stitch row on row 19. And then again, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, row 19, the next buttonhole, and so on. So you can just count these garter stitch rows here at the end, and that way you have them spaced just like I am doing them. Now for row 6 here, which is row 4 of the double moss stitch pattern, I'm going to knit 5. This row is being worked on the wrong side. Pass the stitch marker, look at the next stitch. Remember, that when you're on the wrong side, you work the stitches exactly how they are. So you're going to start with a knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one, and that's how you're going to continue to the end of the row. So go ahead, finish this 6th row. I will meet you at the end. I'm here at the end of row 6, which is the 4th row, to the double moss stitch pattern past the stitch marker. Now this stitch here before the stitch marker is a knit stitch. Now knit 5 here at the end. And here is row 6. We have completed 4 rows here for the pattern. From here on, you're just going to continue and repeat over and over these 4 rows, just like you did for the sleeves. Now, I'm not sure how many rows I'm going to do here for the body, but continue watching. I will let you know exactly how many rows we're going to do here for the body, and I will also give you the row where I'm going to be adding my buttonholes. Go ahead and continue in this way, just repeating these 4 rows for the double moss stitch pattern, and continue watching. I will let you know how many rows we're going to do, so continue and I'll meet you at the end of that row. I finished the body of the little sweater. This is where I repeated the last 4 rows that I showed you. This is for the double moss stitch pattern. Now I have a total of 92 rows, counting from the first row where we added the first buttonhole here in row 1 of the first repeat here of the yoke, not counting the rows here of the neckline. So if you count each one of these bumps here along the very edge, I have a total of 92 rows, and that puts me at about row 93 right now, which I'm about to start, and I'm going to show you with the hem. Now, to give you an idea, I know it's hard to count these rows here, but to give you an idea of the measurement from under the sleeve to the end of the last row that I did, row 92, it's measuring about 25.5 centimeters, which is about 10 inches. You can make this part here longer. That would be up to you, or shorter. Now, as far as buttonholes, I have added a total of 6. The first buttonhole was added here. This would have been row 1 of the first repeat. Now, the second buttonhole was made on row 19. The third buttonhole on row 37, the fourth on row 55, the fifth on row 73, and the sixth was done here on row 91. Again, you can make more rows, less rows. You can easily adjust the length here of your sweater. What I'm going to do next is the hem. So to do this, I'm going to do it how I did it here, where I did knit 1, purl 1, and I'm going to do, I don't know, 8, 10 rows. We'll see, but let me show you how we're going to do this. Remember, here we knit these first 5 stitches. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm on the right side, by the way. This is row 93. Now, past the stitch marker. To start the hem here, what I'm going to do is the last 2 rows that I did were knit rows, 1 and 2. So I have 2 knit stitches here right below this first stitch. So 2 knit rows. So I'm going to continue with the same thing. I'm going to do a knit 1, then I'm going to purl 1. I guess this would be row 1 of the hem, or row 93. I'm going to do this until I come to the last stitch before the stitch marker, and then I'm going to knit 5 at the end. So continue, finish this first row of the hem, and then I'll come back and show you row 2. I'm here at the end of row 93. This is the right side. This would be row 1 of the hem. Here at the end, I have the last stitch before the stitch marker. I'm going to knit 1 past the stitch marker and then knit 5. Now turn for the second row, or row 94. I'm going to knit 5. This here is the wrong side, past the stitch marker, and here what I'm going to do is I'm going to purl 1, then knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1. And that's how I'm going to continue to the end. I will meet you here at the end of row 94, or the second row of the hem, to show you how we're going to continue with the rest. I'm here at the end of row 94, or the second row here for the hem. This is the wrong side. Here's my last stitch. I am going to purl 1 here at the end, pass the stitch marker, and then knit 5. There. Now turn for row 95. This will be the third row of the hem. We're going to knit 5, pass the stitch marker, and then just repeat the same thing. You're going to look at the stitches and see how they are. This first column here is a knit, so you're going to knit 1. The next one is a purl, so purl 1. And that's how you're going to continue. Knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. Now I'm going to do this for about 8 rows, where I just repeat the last 2 rows that I just showed you. And then in the last row, I'm going to go ahead and cast off my stitches. So continue, finish the hem, and then I'll come back and show you how we're going to cast off our stitches. I finished making the hem. I did a total of 8 rows here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cast off my stitches. So here to cast off, I'm going to knit 2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the first stitch over the second. Next one, knit, bring the first stitch on the needle over the second, knit, bring the stitch on the needle over, knit, bring the stitch over the needle. Now remove the stitch markers, and here you're just going to knit the knit stitches and purl the purl stitches, and do the same thing. Bring the stitch that's on the needle over that first stitch or the second stitch. Next one is a purl, so purl 1, bring this stitch over, knit, bring this stitch over, purl, bring this stitch over, and so on. And this is how we're going to cast off our stitches. Continue, finish this row, and then I'll come back and show you the finished sweater. I finished casting off my stitches. Now here at the end, you're going to be left with 1 extra stitch. All you need to do is just cut your yarn and pass your yarn through that last loop, and then just hide your ends. So this part here is done, and the little sweater is done. You can leave it like this. It's all done. Or you can do what I'm going to do next, which is do this border here all around. I like to do chains with slip stitches using a crochet hook all around. And I'm going to show you how I did this part here. As you can see, it looks very pretty. It gives it a nice touch. So if you want to do it how I'm going to do it, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to undo this. I did it just to see how it will look, and I do like it. So here at the end, I cut my yarn and pass my yarn through that last loop. So here I'm going to be using this yarn here. It's the same yarn here minus the 1 strand that I was using here. So what I'm going to do is, this is where I cut my yarn, pass my yarn through that last loop. So I'm going to go right here into this very edge, right into the corner right there with the crochet hook, and I'm using this 3mm hook. So now what I'm going to do here is just pull a loop and loosely chain 2, not too tight. And then we're going to skip 2 rows of garter stitch. So 1 and 2, and into the next, insert your hook into that stitch right along the edge and make a slip stitch. Again, chain 2, skip 2 rows, 1 and 2, and into the next right here, right below the 3rd row, right there, make a slip stitch. Chain 2, skip 1, 2, and right below the 3rd, there's that stitch. You can see that bar right there. Insert your hook there and make a slip stitch. Chain 2, skip 2 rows, these 2 rows here of garter stitch, and into the next, in between the next 2 I should say, make a slip stitch. Chain 2, skip 2 rows, and in between the next 2, make a slip stitch. Now here you can chain 3 if you want. This is going to give it like a scalloped finish. I like 2 because sometimes our tension varies here along the very edge, and this helps keep the band nice and straight. So here I'm going to continue again and show you. Chain 2, skip these 2 rows of garter stitch, and between the next 2 make a slip stitch. Chain 2, skip these 2 rows, and then a slip stitch. I'm going to continue like this all the way to the top, and then I'm going to show you how I'm going to work the neckline. Okay, I'm here at the top. I'm going to skip the last 2 stitches and into the first row here. This is the row where we cast on our stitches. Just make your last slip stitch into that very corner. So this is how it looks. The front panel on this side is done. I like how this turned out. Now around the neckline, I'm going to chain 3, and I'm going to skip 2 stitches, 1, 2, and into the third stitch here, make a slip stitch. 1, 2, 3. I'm doing 3 chains instead of 2 because I want this to be nice and loose. Now skip, you can see the stitches up here, 1, 2, and into the third, make a slip stitch. 1, 2, 3 chains, skip 1, 2, and into the third stitch here, make a slip stitch. So 1, 2, and into the third. Let's see how it looks. Yes, perfect. I like how this looks here around the neckline, so I'm going to continue like this all around until I come here. My last stitch should be right here into the very corner, and then all you're going to do is just continue along the second front panel from the top down until you come here to the end, and do the same thing I did here, just to give you an idea of how many chain 2 spaces I have here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. I have 26 chain 2 spaces here along this front panel. So I'm going to try to do the same thing here on this side so it all looks even. So go ahead and finish the last row here, and then I'll come back and show you the finished sweater, and I'll give you the finished measurements. I finished making this row of chains along with slip stitches down the second front panel. Here at the end, I just did my last slip stitch, cut my yarn, and I just passed my yarn through that last loop, and then I just hid my ends here on the inside. So this part here is done. Now I also went ahead and attached my buttons. These buttons here are 16mm size. You can also use 17 or 15. Just make sure that the buttonhole that we did here is big enough for the buttons that you're going to use. I'm using 16mm size. So this little sweater is done. Well, not so little. This one is in a bigger size. Here are the sleeves. This is the yoke, the bottom. Let me show you the back side. Here's the back. It's absolutely beautiful. I love this yoke. along with the stitch pattern that I used here. I already have a baby version of this same cardigan. It's the Samuel cardigan. I'll leave the link in the information box, and that one is totally for babies. This one here is for toddler sizes. So let me give you the finished measurement. The total length of the sleeve from the top of the neckline to the end of the cuff, it's measuring about 16 inches, which is about 42 centimeters. From under the sleeve to the end of the cuff, it's about 25.5 centimeters, which is about 10 inches. And the width of the sleeve, just the top, it's about 12 centimeters, which is about 4.75 inches. Now the length from the top of the neckline to the end of the hem, it's about 41 centimeters, which is about 16 inches. From the underarm to the end of the hem, it's about 29 centimeters, which is about 11.5 inches. And the yoke, this part here right across, it's measuring about 16 centimeters, which is about 6.25 inches. And the chest measurement, just the top from here to here, the chest measurement, it's measuring about 33 centimeters, which is about 13 inches. Now the neck all around finished, it's measuring about 30.5 centimeters, which is about 12 inches. So based on these measurements, this little cardigan sweater, coat, or jacket is for little girls and boys between 3 and 4 years old. Now you can easily make it smaller or bigger. I'd say from 1 to 2 years old and up to 6 to 7 years old. In the information box below, I'll go ahead and leave you some information on how you can easily make it smaller or bigger, so be sure to check that out. And as always, if you prefer written pattern, check out my Etsy shop. I'll leave the link to my Etsy shop in the information box and up here on the right hand side. Thank you so much for your support. Okay, so this was today's tutorial. I hope you like it. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.